Hey, what's up? This is Trey Pierce, audio engineer,
digital director,
director of financial planning and analysis,
senior creative director of A&R,
program director, morning show host,
and you're listening to the Springboard
Music Podcast.
If you're an artist, try to get your own plane in the air. Write your own songs. And if you get your own plane in the air and then here comes a label to strap jet engines onto your plane, if you're not well balanced, then your plane's going to disintegrate the second that they light those jet engines.
Our guest today is none other than Scott Brickell. He is the founder and president of Brickhouse Entertainment. He has been portrayed by Trace Adkins in the film I Can Only Imagine and released the book, The Business Behind the Song. It's essentially the Springboard Music Podcast in book form. I would highly recommend grabbing yourself a copy after listening to this interview. I was really impressed and continue to be impressed in the book of not just bringing up CCM examples. You were talking about Taylor Swift and Lorde and bringing in all of these pop culture references. Is that something that you just knew off the top of your head, or somebody suggested you should throw in there? Or how do you keep up with all the industry news if that's all organic? I am envious.
Well, I've been doing it for 30 something years, right? So, some of it's, new and fresh, and some of it's been with me for a long time. I think sometimes I'll keep up with articles and magazines and things like that. The one thing that I probably read more than anything is Polestar, which is the kind of the concert business side of the music business. It's I would say a lot of like promoters, a lot of festival buyers, managers, booking agents. We all subscribe to that, and there's articles in there, there's quotes in there. It's a lot about show information. How are tickets selling? Who did what in what venue? The week before, who did the highest selling show the week before, and it's weekly. If you hadn't seen it, you need to check it out.
I haven't. I do need to check that out.
I get a lot of my information from there.
That's incredible. I've never heard of it. And now that might be something I write off.
Should be.
Yeah, it should be.
I get a weekly, it's a weekly brag. And so I get it every week. And I usually have somebody go through it and earmark it, with our artists or, things that are CCM related. And that way I can flip through it quicker. But man, I'll spend more than one would think on that magazine.
That's awesome.
Yep.
I think that is something, whether you're in the industry or want to be in the industry, that's a way to build up your dictionary, your encyclopedia of where to go, what's happening, who to know, all of that stuff.
Yeah, every show, it lists every show that was like in the very back, it'll have domestic shows and then international shows. And it's just the biggest to the smallest. Like it starts with the Taylor Swift, sold out the stadium 2 days in a row, and the numbers and the ticket prices and the gross, and but it also lists the manager, it lists the opening acts, it lists the booking agent, and the label, and then it'll go all like in order all the way down to some small club that sold 23 tickets and grossed $512. And you can watch artists go up and down during their career. And that's a great resource for a festival whenever they're trying to decide who to bring in.
Totally.
A great resource for a headlining act whenever they're trying to decide who to take as a support act or an opening act. So it's the good part about it is it those numbers don't lie. The bad part about it is if you're trying to create a story that
the numbers don't
more
lie.
Of a story than the numbers are proving, the numbers don't lie. So
yep. If you're trying to spin a little bit of marketing, could be tricky. Somebody can fact check that. Yep. I want to start off. I know we could back end this conversation with the book, but I want to front end the conversation of the book, the business behind the song. We were talking about how this is literally the Springboard Music Podcast in a book. We had the same idea, which is so serendipitous and so cool. It's incredible. I feel like feel like I kind of know you, even just being 150 pages in. We'll see. Big statement. But my point being, you make yourself feel really accessible and really transparent. And I don't feel like you have these walls up or, oh, somebody's going to be upset if I make this point. I feel like you really had it in the reader's best interest. And what I really love is at the end of each chapter, you talk about jobs pertaining to the role you just discussed. And I so wish I had a resource like that. You too?
That's why I wrote it. Like, I mean, it took me 6 years after I got to town to understand how everything worked together and what does a producer do, and what's a distribution company, and how does publishing work, and when does the PR team kick in, and it took me about 5 to 10 years to master. I mean, they say it takes 10 years to master anything, right? So I would say around the 6 year mark, everything started clicking. But I mean, I also put a glossary in the book just to help with terms and things like that.
I
which
loved
think is
that.
valuable. Real quick on the list of jobs in that area at the end of each chapter. So whenever we were kind of done and we were wrapping it up, and we're like, what's the title going to be for the book? Like, let's think about that. So we spent a session and we were kind of kicking around some ideas, and I threw out, let's name it the 182 jobs in the music business. And we all kind of laughed, because that number seemed pretty high. And we kept going with other names, and one of my staff would kind of started going through and counting them up, and at the end he goes, there's exactly 182 jobs that you list in the music.
No, did you know that?
I had no clue. I was actually throwing out a number that I thought was like double, what I mean, like some big old number. And I don't know if it's still that, because we've edited it and changed some things a little bit in the end, but yeah, it was pretty funny. It was a pretty funny moment for sure.
I never want to play against you in one of those, like, guess how many M&Ms are in the jar. Right. I never want to be up against Scott Brickell ever.
That's funny.
That is nuts. So how long have you been working on this book?
Well, I started it as, the whole thing kind of started as a presentation to potential artists who, I'll get a call from a friend or a promoter buddy, and he's like, hey, I got this high schooler, or these parents think that their kid, and would you mind meeting with them? And so I just was doing the same talk over and over again. I've done the talk got to be close to 1,000 times, if not more. And I started doing it to the point where I was getting bored with myself doing the talk, because I was just saying the same thing. And so I was like, man, I remember a couple times forgetting some key points, in the talk. And so I put it together in a presentation form with the help of Prezi.com. And so I put a Prezi together and, just kept doing the talk, but it gave Dad something to hold and look at and take notes on and, ask questions about. And I probably did the Prezi 15 years ago.
What?
And yeah, it's been a long time. And it's changed over the years. I've tweaked it, and I feel like it's gotten better over the years, just by, me doing the talk over and over. But David Nasser heard about my Prezi, and David was at Liberty at the time, and he had a group of like 70 students that were either scholarship or partial scholarship. And they were handling all of his worship whenever he did, his worship nights on Wednesday nights. And they also handled the music for his convocation events that are twice a week. But it wasn't just musicians and singers. It was also production staff, graphic designers, like, more than just artists or musicians or singers. And so he's like, man, I really want you to come and give your Prezi to my group of students. And I said, man, I'd love to. So went up there, did about an hour talk. Afterwards, I was like, okay, I'm gonna take a break. He gave me like a night slot, like their weekly Thursday night slot or whatever.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm done. If you guys need to go study for a test or go get dinner or whatever, I said, but I'm gonna go to the bathroom and get a bottle of water, and I'll come back and do Q&A or tell some stories, because you're not getting a flight out of Lynchburg after.
No.
6
You're
o'clock.
there. You're there till the morning.
I'm there till the morning. And all 70 of the students stayed, which I thought was a Nasser move, like he made them stay. But as we got into the Q&A, I realized, man, these students are hungry for this information, and it really is going to help them. And I did about a 2.5, 3 hour Q&A
Wow.
on top of the hour presentation, and they were real questions. They were asking real questions, from the Prezi, or things that kind of the Prezi had spurred for them to kind of think about or ask. And I walked away from there going, man, I think I need to turn this into a book. And that was November of 2019. And 4 or 5 months later, we're all sitting around doing nothing. And I just said, well, I guess this is my time to do the book. And I didn't let my staff go. I didn't, throttle anybody's salary. I just was trusting that we were going to get through this. And so we just started working on the book as a staff.
Wow.
And got together with Forefront Publishing, and they helped me find a ghostwriter. And he kind of took my Prezi. I went through and typed out everything I could for each section of the book. And then, we got together. I told him a bunch of stories. So he kind of pieced it together, but definitely made it, you said it's approachable. Like, that's what I want it to be. Like, I want this information to be given to the next generation to help them understand, really what it is, and help them get to the job that they want sooner.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people come to town and they'll do an internship, or they'll start working at a label, and then, they get a year or so into the label, and then they're like, I think I want to work, I want to work as a producer or for a producer, or I think I want to be on the road, or someone will start on the road and they're like, I think I want to work at a label or work at a booking agency. And I just think this will help people understand where they might fit in a little bit sooner than they would of spending a year or two, working in the business. And, that just helps everybody. That helps the company that they start off at, so they don't spend a year or two investing in them to, potentially be a long-term employee. But, just helps everybody. It helps, people get to where they're calling and where their gifts are sooner. So that's definitely, that was the heart behind it. And that's why I wanted to do it. And, wrote it for myself. And also, kind of in the back of my head, my mom, who's no longer with us, she always talked about writing a book, and she never got around to it. So I kind of wrote it for her, with her in mind as well. So
that's
it
so
was
special.
definitely multiple reasons.
Yeah, it's extra special knowing that was a dream of hers and you got to fulfill it for her, which is amazing.
Yeah.
I love how you said it helps people get to the job that they want sooner.
Mm-hmm.
That's been my mission too. My background is in radio. I did not go to a music business school. I did not study music business, but I knew I wanted to do it. Just so happened that the school I was called to didn't have a music business program.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, okay, God, what are you doing? This makes no sense. It was in the middle of the cornfields in Indiana at Baylor University. My dad just kept saying, God knows your address. God knows your address.
That's a good one.
And yeah, it sounded, I would roll my eyes every time he said it then.
Sure.
But that being said, when really radio found me, I fell in love with it. And it's like, man, I didn't know anything about this. I didn't know to pursue it. Had I mean, WBCL is in conjunction with Baylor University. I could have been interning there while I was at Baylor, and who knows? So I think that it's really important to kind of take the veil off of the jobs and show people this is what it really is, because most people have a very skewed, misinformed idea of what A&R is.
Mm-hmm.
So, hey, let's actually practically look at what you want to do. And if you have the skill set for it, is it something you even want to do? And then let's talk about how to get there and how to utilize where you are now to jumpstart getting there.
I had a guy come to me. So my son played football for Liberty, and he called me one day and he goes, hey, I've got this friend. He goes, you met him? And I vaguely remember meeting him. He goes, hey, do you have a couple minutes to spend talking to this guy about the music business? And I was like, maybe, we'll see. So I went up for a football game, and it was about halftime, and I called his number and I said, can you meet after the football game at, the place I was staying? And he said, sure. So I went through the Prezi with him. He left that meeting, called his dad, changed his major to music business. Thought he's supposed to be a producer, but then called me a year later and was like, "No, I'm supposed to be a manager." And so
Whoa.
now he works for me.
No way. Most people know that managing is the heaviest, busiest, one of the heaviest, busiest jobs in the industry. You are a counselor, you are a shoulder to cry on, you are in the weeds of every single project with every single partner. But when your wife was pregnant, that was when you decided, hey, I think I want to start my own management company for balance, really, and like more of a say in your family life. Talk to me about your rationale there, because to me, I was like, managing, I wouldn't do that now with no kids.
Right. You know, when God calls you to do something, like I had just by that point in my life learned to answer the call sooner than later. And, you know, I just went to my wife and I said, I think I'm supposed to do this. And she goes, I think you are too. And I knew, like in the back of my mind, I knew she was going to say yes, but there was still this twinge of, I shouldn't even ask because, you know, we just found out we're pregnant, right, with our first. And that's whenever you need to be locking into stability. And if you're going to get a job, like get a job with a company that, you know, has some health benefits and things
Totally.
like that. And she's just like, yeah, I think you're supposed to. And I mean, it wasn't, you know, we call those days the salad days because there wasn't, you know, wasn't a lot of eating out, you know, during that time.
Yeah.
But you know, if the Lord calls you to do it, you know, the sooner you say yes, the better. And it was, you know, she was definitely on board, and I mean, she taught me a lot. You know, she's like, if God calls you to do it, like, there's no sense in us even, you know, trying anything else. And you know, she came to me 11 years ago and said, I think I'm supposed to get my master's. And I was like, go, you know, let's do it. And so she got that. It took her, you know, maybe a year or two. And then after she got
Good for her.
got that, she's like, I think I'm supposed to get my doctorate. And I was like, I wondered when you were going to say it because Lord told me a little while ago, but I was just waiting for you to come around. And she's like, oh yeah. Okay. So, you know, a year ago, March, she got her doctorate.
Wow. So when you decided to start up Brickhouse Entertainment, what was the initial vision, and did it become that, or did it change over time?
I didn't have like a big vision. I just knew I was supposed to start Brickhouse and help artists and serve artists. I think I've gotten better at how I serve artists, and you know, I think I've gotten better boundaries. You know, when I first started working, you know, I was with Audio Adrenaline, and I was doing everything. I was picking up laundry. I was, you know, crawling through doggy doors to feed
Oof.
dogs. I was, you know,
Oof.
doing all, you know, like when they
God.
go on vacation or whatever. I'd be like, yeah, I'll swing by and feed the dogs. And, you know, I've learned to kind of leave all that stuff to, you know, to the families to figure out on their own. But, you know, my goal and my calling all along has been to serve, you know, and I've kind of taken that to the motto of protect and serve. And so, you know, it was, can't remember the guy's name. I need to figure out who it is, but he said, if you're called to serve, never stoop to be a king. And I was, you know, that's rung in my head, you know, hundreds and thousands of times of, hey, if this is what I'm called to do, then do it with as much joy as you can. You know, some days it's great to do what I do, and some days it's a job, you know, straight job. And but you know, it's what I'm called to do. It's what I enjoy doing. I love helping artists, you know, accomplish some of the things that they feel like God's called them to do. And but when I started Brickhouse, it was simply like, I just want to be a place for artists to be able to come and you know, get a manager that is. I mean, I feel like I've got a good head on my shoulders. I feel like I'm a straight talker. Like, I've been around managers that are a little bit more like, you know, I'm going to use the word yes men. You know, whatever the artists want to do is a great idea. Well, I'm not that. I'll help the artist achieve whatever ideas we kind of come up with together. And initially I'll say, yeah, let's check into it. But after we check into it a little bit, I'm not afraid to say I don't think that's the right direction to go. So I feel like as a manager, you need to be able to kind of push back and deal with conflict in a timely fashion. And that's something that I've learned is a necessary evil, so to speak. I don't love conflict, but I've learned the sooner I jump in and deal with it, the better it's going to be, and the sooner we can get on to the things that we need to deal with.
Yeah, really, the smaller the conflict it will become, the quicker you
Exactly.
address it.
Let's put it all on the table, and it's not a problem. It's just something to talk about, and let's put it on the table and figure it out. And sometimes it's misunderstanding, sometimes it's direct conflict, sometimes it's you just don't agree. But let's just talk about it and either agree to disagree or agree to make a decision that allows us to move forward in one way or another. But I just feel like that those are the gifts that God gave me to really help artists and serve artists, and not be afraid to take on the weight of a big tour and the financial burdens that brings. At the same time, I'm fine to go in and have a conversation with a label or a booking agency, and let's get down to brass tacks. Like I can deal with the truth. I can deal with reality. As long as you can deal with reality, if we meet certain benchmarks, then we need to up the game, and we need to spend more marketing dollars, and we need to go to bigger venues, or all those kind of things. So I'm always the kind of guy that'll bet on me and my artist. So I'm not afraid to risk it and prove that the ideas that we have do work. So my vision for Brickhouse was just kind of like the name says, be a solid foundation for artists to house their some of their ideas. And I definitely protect and serve isn't just like them physically, but also like in the public's eye. Like I'm always the bad guy, right? If you call and you want the artist to go do some sort of charity event, it's not them saying no, it's me that says no, because you can be mad at me. I don't want you mad at my artist.
Right.
So I want Brickhouse to be that from artists as well. Like I want them to have a great reputation and everybody to love them regardless of how mean and disagreeing I am as a manager. So
I'm curious, when you started, what qualified you to be a manager, or was there any sort of imposter syndrome when you approached? I think MercyMe was your first band that you signed, and then Audio Adrenaline. Was there any imposter syndrome of like, yeah, I can totally do this. Let's do it. I got to get them on board and I'll figure it out.
I would say I've had more imposter syndrome with writing the book than I did back when I started my management company.
Really?
Yeah.
You're not, I mean, that makes sense. You're not an author.
Right. I'm not an author.
Well, you are.
I don't read books. I don't, my mom's the teacher. My wife's the teacher. My wife's the one with the doctorate. My sister's a teacher. My aunt was a teacher. My grandma was a teacher.
Wow.
But I'm just not. And so I definitely, there were moments where I was writing the book that I was like, no one's going to care what I have to say, especially when I'm talking about like things that aren't directly in my field, like management or artist, or I feel like I'm really good at touring, so the touring side of things, working with promoters and booking agents. But like talking about what labels do, like I'm not a label, I've never ban a label,
but you've worked with one closely.
I've worked with a bunch, and so but there were definitely moments that I was like, oh gosh, no one's gonna care. So but when I first started, like I had been on the road so much before I even knew that this job existed, because I was helping a friend from grade school that I ended up bumping into in high school, and just started traveling around with him on weekends and spring break and summer break, and and we were doing youth group events, and I was in the youth group at my church that we would have events. I had been going to church my whole life, so I felt like it was really in my wheelhouse. Like, yeah, having an artist in, I know what the youth pastor is expecting. I know kind of what the youth are thinking, because I still was a youth for the most part through most of those years. And even, when I went to Baylor, like I was still right in the middle of Christendom. I was, doing college at a Baptist university, and And so whenever I'd go out and road, be on the road with this artist, like I was driving, setting up, tearing down, but I was working with the church and the local, youth group or youth pastor. And, the youth group was usually the volunteers helping us load in, so I could have full on conversations like, what are you guys studying as a youth group right now? Or, have you done this study, that came out a couple years ago, or, so it was all just kind of in my wheelhouse. I had no idea that I was doing about 6 years of internship and training for what was going to be my life's work. And so by the time I kind of landed in Nashville, that was a fairly easy transition because I was still working for the management company that managed Brian, who I'd been on the road with. And I was helping them during the week and Brian on the weekends. And, then after working there for about 2.5 years, I just started working with True Artist, who managed Toby Mac and Audio Adrenaline. And so, being Audio Adrenaline's day to day, that was a natural transition. And so, I had the relationship with Audio Adrenaline whenever I started Brickhouse, and they came with me from True Artist, and there was a transition period in there where they needed to pay out their sunset clause and all that with True Artist. But like I said, those were the salad days.
Yeah.
But we got through them, and the second artist I signed was MercyMe's, and the third artist was Switchfoot, and that's a pretty good way to start. But
Iconic. Those are legends.
yeah, so it was a fun start, and I've never had anybody like question me as far as you don't know or you're not old enough, because I'm 6'5". I've always been a tall guy, and usually you don't argue much with the tall guy, and I've learned how to use the low voice and the stare and things like that over the years. So yeah, I mean, and the thing of it is I've seldom had to use it for real. I've used it as a joke more than anything. But just always trying to set up deals where everybody walks away a little bit of a winner, at least a little bit of a winner, to where we can all do this another day. Obviously, as a manager, I'm trying to support my artist and therefore, have things swing toward my artist's favor. But I also don't like leaving promoters hanging where they lose money on a show. I want fans to have a good experience. I don't want anybody leaving the show, super upset about anything. So, you give away a T-shirt here or there. You split a loss with a promoter here or there, and you learn as you go. Not only as a manager, but you help your artists learn. I mean, one of the things I've always wanted to do is, and I always try to do is, as I'm working with an artist, is make sure they understand the reasons that we're making the decisions we're making. And I'll probably talk to them more just because I want them to understand. I want them to be educated and know that we're making this decision with the information we have right now. Now tomorrow, some information might change. And if we can adjust our decision based on new information, great. If we can't and we're locked into a decision, then we're locked in. And, sometimes information changes and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes when it changes in our favor. Sometimes it changes, against our favor. So, but, I've made mistakes, and my artists have been right there with me, and we, we get through those mistakes, we learn from them, and we move on. And, I think by helping my artist understand the business, I think whenever mistakes are made, they're more, gracious and forgiving and things like that. So,
I'm curious now, when I was preparing for this interview, I was in a conundrum because we could talk about the angle of how does somebody become a manager, and then we could also talk about the angle of an artist needing a manager and that relationship.
okay.
So some of the questions I have are going to be a little intermixed because I think that people who listen, they might be artists who are pursuing a career, and kind of like your friend, they fall into artist management instead of becoming an artist themselves. So it could be beneficial on both ends.
Okay.
MercyMe, you have had signed to you the entire duration of their career. Incredible artists to have sought out and to have gotten with Brickhouse Entertainment. What do you look for in an artist when deciding whether or not to sign them?
Well, I mean, they've got to be talented. They've got to, I prefer an artist that can write songs. It's artists that aren't just sitting around waiting for people to pitch them songs. But they got to be able to sing. They got to have, some drive and desire. But I was on a podcast not too long ago with Jonathan Plecluda, and he said, "What's the number one thing?" I said, "You got to be a good hang.
Totally.
You just got to be a good
I
hang."
underline that time and time again in your book because I'm pretty sure we've had probably 20 guests so far. Every single person has said something along the lines of you have to be a good hang. So now I'm going to take it a little step further. How do you know if you're a good hang? And how can you work on your hang?
Yeah, so I think it's important to care about everyone that's in the room. And part of being a good hang is how can you help them? And if you run everything that you say while you're with people, everything that you do while you're with people through the filter of how can I help them? And, I use the word, serve or be a servant heart or things like that. I mean, it's not necessarily that. It's just, maybe just sitting around talking about their career or what they want to do. Or maybe there's somebody, that they need to meet. Like maybe there's a writer or another artist or a booking agent or a venue that you think they could play at. Like, be interested enough in other people that you're willing to invest in their career a little bit, because no one cares about your career until they think that you care about their career. And that's sort of a practical way to be a good hang. You take the opposite of that and you got somebody that's just constantly trying to, hey, let's listen to this song. Hey, all right, I wrote this song last week. Hey, I sent you this song 2 weeks ago. Did you listen to it yet? Being annoying, like it's all about them. It's like, if like, let's say you and I are writing a song and I never like any of your lines. It only prompts me to come up with a different line and never acknowledging that some of your lines are good, or whatever. And so, I would say being a bad hang is just constantly self-promoting, constantly thinking, how can we turn this into it being about me? The me, I, syndrome. What was the maybe a Toby Keith song or something?
Yeah,
Where
I want to talk
I
about
want
me.
to talk about me.
I want to
Let's talk about number one, my.
I love that song.
Yeah, so I just I crack up when I hear it because so many people in this town, that's what they want to do. It's just like me, more me, a lot of me. Here's pictures of me. Here's songs of me. Here's my touring schedule. Here's how good I can play. Here's how good I can sing. And it's just like, oh, give me a break, But if you just sit around and talk about everybody else that's in the room and what they got going on and where they're from and, learn about people and, honestly,
Kind of makes you
about
appear more interesting because you're a little bit more elusive. It's like,
yeah,
what about you? Now I'm curious about you. You're kind of
exactly.
quiet about yourself.
Exactly. And I mean, I'll shut people down all the time. I'm like, we're not to me yet. Let's keep going about you,
Mhm.
So that's, but I mean, some of that is just genuinely like I've been doing this long enough. I want to know where people are from and what they're about. But yeah, I mean, drop off donuts to people that are getting together for a meeting or a right session, and don't come in and drop off donuts and try to be a part of the right session. Drop off donuts and go. Hope this helps y'all come up with an amazing song. Can't wait to hear it. Peace out.
So
Like drop
good.
the mic and leave.
So good.
You
Yep.
know,
Yep. Don't use it as a vessel into something else. Just use it as a little notch in your relational bank.
way of thinking about you. I'm just thinking about you.
Totally.
Just thinking about
What is a good way for somebody to get noticed by a manager? Should they look up Scott Brickell, Brickhouse Entertainment, send out an email to you with some demos, hyperlink. Like, do y'all look at that? Does that matter?
Anything that comes in cold is probably not going to make it to me. It's going to make it, to maybe some of my staff. But the problem with that is that whole, email stuff is so backed up. There's so much stuff in there, and you're usually going to make it. You're usually going to make it to me by someone introducing you to me. And honestly, the ones that I pay attention to the most are when an A&R guy calls and he goes, "Hey,
Totally.
we're meeting with this artist. We've been talking to this artist. We're thinking about signing them. They don't have a manager yet. Would love for you to meet with them." Now, a label's probably going to do that right after the artist inks the contract with the label, because they don't want me to jump in and try to change the deal or any of that kind of stuff. So once there's at least a production deal in place or some sort of paperwork done, then they try to help the artist find a manager. And so those are the ones that I pay attention to probably the most. Other than that, I get calls all the time. I get emails. I get text messages. I get links sent to me, and I'll click on them, while I'm, driving down the road or wait for my plane or whatever. And usually 9 times out of 10, they're really good. And the problem with being really good is Nashville is a sea of really good. It's an ocean full of really good. And you got to somehow stand out. You got to be unique in some way. And whether that's you're an amazing vocalist, or you got a sense of humor to you, or you got some unique sound in your voice, or you're just, your lyrics are next level. Like you've overthought the lyrics to the point where you're like, wow, that was creative. So there's got to be something that moves the needle other than you're really good. You send me a really good version of you singing the national anthem, and I'll be like, okay, they can sing the national anthem. They're a really good singer. Next,
Right.
But if you send me a really good version of you singing the national anthem, and you put a unique spin to it and a little bit of a different, no, don't jack with the national anthem, but you can throw an arrangement on it that's got a little flair, to who you are, or take any cover song and throw some unique flair or something like that on there, and get my attention other than just being really good. Most of the artists that I've worked with are really good frontmen. And I mean, well, let me rephrase that, because I just said if you're really good, there's a sea of really good. So they're amazing frontmen or women, and they just have this unique ability to connect with the crowd. And sometimes they do that through humor. Like Bart is he's hilarious. The lead singer of MercyMe's, if you go to one of their shows, you'll be like, oh my gosh, that was funny. But he also is very serious. Like, he gets you in the palm of his hands by being funny, and then he'll throw some nuggets of wisdom or truth on you, and you're so he's got you. Phil Wickham gets you in the palm of his hands by his talent. Like that dude can flat out lead you to the throne room, and you feel like he's an angel singing to you, like legitimate angel.
No, you really do.
Really do.
You
right?
really do.
And Micah Tyler is an amazing singer. He's an amazing vocalist. He's an amazing lyricist. He's got a great sense of humor. And I actually signed Micah before I ever heard him sing. I just met with him.
Yeah, why?
I just knew I was going to help.
That's risky.
It's a little risky, right? But to my defense, Phil's road manager had already kind of told me the guy's got, he's got pipes, right? So I just went with that. But when I met with him, I was just like, man, I want to help you regardless of whether, we get you a record deal or whatever. And, luckily we were able to get him a record deal in the next like 3 or 4 months. So, yeah, but just, you got to have something other than you got to have a uniqueness about you that makes you stand out, and in a pretty significant way fairly quickly. Like, you got 8 seconds is what I kind of tell people. You got about 8 seconds to capture my attention, because I know that's what the label's saying, and I know that's what the fans are doing. Like, you got to capture our attention as fans in about 8 seconds, or we're hitting the next, the button to move on.
100%.
100%.
That's really great advice. I'm so glad you said all of that, especially about the sea. Nashville's a sea of really good. So I would almost be curious to say, like, make it really big in your smaller town that's not Nashville, and then come into the sea of really good and make connections there, because the music industry is a traveling business. They're going to be in all your states. You're going to be able to make connections with people.
Yep. That's a great word. I got contacted by a singer that has been working in Orlando, and she's like, I'm thinking about coming to Nashville. And I was like, okay, what are you doing in Orlando? And she's like, well, I got this kind of as a regular gig, and I got this as a regular gig, and this is a regular gig. And I said, well, she's singing at Old Red like 3 times a week right now in Orlando.
Wow.
And I said, well, they got an Old Red here. And she goes, yeah, but they don't pay like they do in Orlando, because there's so many people in Nashville that'll come into Old Red just to get the gig, just
Totally.
to have a good place to play. And so she couldn't come here and get that same money, playing at Old Red here in Nashville. So, and I get it. Like, I don't blame them. I'm not mad at them. It's just the economics of being in Nashville versus being in Orlando. And so I'm like, well, then you need to stay in Orlando, because you're right. We travel. We'll find you.
Yeah.
And you said get really good where you're at and then come to Nashville, but I just say get really good where you're at and have Nashville come find you.
Ooh, I like that. Look at us refining each other at what we're saying.
Iron sharpens iron.
So I'm curious, for somebody who has been approached by managers, what are some red flags? You have a manager approaching you, they do blank. Let's investigate a little bit. Warning sign goes up.
You know what? That's funny. You mentioned Chase a while ago. We were thinking about meeting with an artist, and he said, man, I had an interaction with them, just not interested. And it wasn't a direct interaction. It was I was part of a conversation that they were part of, like a group conversation. And he's just like, just a couple of comments, and it just didn't feel honoring, I think, to everybody that was in the conversation. And he's like, I just, there's just no need for that. I would say I try to see if they have a balanced lifestyle. Like, if they're all in on this entertainment business, and this is what they want to do, and this is what they're going to do, and no matter what, and they're gonna, they'll work 24/7, whatever. Like, those are all good things to hear. I want that as a manager, but okay, that's great, but are you doing that to the detriment of your finances? Are you doing that to the detriment of your physical, self, your mental, health, your spiritual health? Like, you have to be balanced, because I use the analogy of getting, if you're an artist, try to get your own plane in the air, write your own songs. And if you get your own plane in the air, and then here comes a label to strap jet engines onto your plane, if you're not well balanced, then your plane's going to disintegrate the second that they light those jet engines. Financially, you're going to blow up. Mentally, you're not going to be able to handle it. Spiritually, you're not grounded. Physically, you can't, handle the grueling, pace that the road will throw at you. And so, I just really look for a balanced lifestyle. Someone that, whenever they come to town, they're like, okay, well, let's meet after my morning workout. And just little things like that, of just knowing that they are trying to have a balanced lifestyle. And I'm not saying, you gotta every day you gotta balance your checkbook, and you gotta, all that kind of stuff, but at least know how to balance a checkbook. At least spend some quality time, on occasion in the Word, and at least, exercise every once in a while. You know what I mean? Like, and so if you're just all in on music, again, that goes back to it's always going to be about you and your music, and it's not going to be about anybody else. So you're probably not a good hang to begin with. See ya.
So good. I love how you brought that back. So I'm curious then, you mentioned boundaries at the beginning of this conversation, and now you've mentioned balance. I'm curious, starting up your own management company right when you were entering fatherhood, which happy belated Father's Day, by the way.
Thank you.
How did you create boundaries? How did you create balance for yourself?
I
Because
mean,
when you're
I would
starting a
say,
business, let alone a management business and fatherhood, that's got to be tricky.
yeah, I mean, I definitely didn't do it right all along the way. I definitely made mistakes, and we could probably have a whole session with my wife about, oh yeah, and he did this, and oh yeah, and he did this, and oh yeah, and this one time, and we could probably have a lot of discussions about some of the things that I didn't do right, but at least I tried to learn from them, and not do it again, wrong 2 times in a row. But I do remember Andy Stanley one time. I heard him do a preach or do a podcast or something, and he said, spend as much time planning coming home from a business trip as you spent planning the business trip.
Wow.
Yeah, right. And that kind of stopped me in my tracks because I'll be like, oh yeah, when I get home, I'm gonna grab the ball, we're gonna go shoot some hoops with my son, or I'm gonna, go spend some time playing Barbies upstairs with my daughters, or whatever. And yes, I play Barbies, so don't even start with me. But
You
just
were always Ken though, right?
oh yeah, just more than that, like spend some actual time, like, okay, what are some shows y'all could watch if it's bedtime, or what are some books that you want to read with your kids, or maybe a place to go that weekend, let's go to research Thomas the Tank Engine's coming to town, and get tickets, and get good tickets, don't get last minute tickets. And I mean, my wife always crushes me in all that because I'll find out about it and she's like, yeah, here's your 2 tickets to the front row, whatever. And I'm like, oh wow. So she's always way ahead of me, which is a great problem to have. But like, don't, like, I've been to everything. I've been to Barney, I've been to just about everything you can think of. And I always had a couple of emergencies in my back pocket, and one of them is the train in Thompson Station. And I came home one day, and my wife was like, "They're all yours, and y'all aren't staying here." So I grabbed a bag of Cheetos, and we went to the train in Thompson Station, and we're marching up and down the train tracks and eating Cheetos. And I've got this amazing picture of all 3 of my kids who have Cheeto fingers and faces. And I've got 4 kids total, but this is back when we only had 3. And one of them's wearing a princess dress, and I mean, it's a really cute picture.
Oh,
And
that's so
it was just me,
sweet.
knowing what the emergency relief button was going to be. And I think God kind of honored that with that picture, and we've had that hanging in our house, for many years. So I can, I mean, I absolutely haven't done it right my whole career. Have I gotten better? Yes. Do I still have it figured out? No. Like, I think as a man who owns his own management company, I'm probably going to always tilt toward business over, making sure the family's, all set up or whatever. But that doesn't mean that I haven't, really spent a lot of time trying to make sure the family's, got some vacation time, and have some fun things on the books. And now I've got my son's married. He's off. He's a flight instructor. I've got 2 daughters that are doing college. One of them lives in Orlando. One of them lives at home. They're both doing online college. And then I've got a 13-year-old that my wife and she loved to ride horses. And so, putting some of those dreams that those my wife and my kids have in front of my dreams, I think that's part of being a man, and being a father, and being a husband, and finding joy in that, not just doing it begrudgingly, but finding joy in buying another horse, and whenever I'd rather buy a boat or whatever. I'm not that good of a fisherman, so don't. I'm just using that as
Well,
an
who
example.
said you
but-
had to fish? You can always just ride it around, listen to some good
Exactly.
music.
Exactly. There you go. But yeah, I mean, just trying to put family, first, and I mean, to me, there's no greater joy than helping launch your kids well, and finding out what it is that they want to do, and then rallying around them and help them come up with plans and places to live. My daughter wants to work at Disney, and so she's got a roommate in a townhome just north of downtown, or just north of Magic Kingdom, and when she's not at camp, she's down there, doing online. I mean, I view her away at college right now. She's just away doing her thing at college.
Right.
She wants to do that, and so I'm trying to help her live out that dream. And so, yeah, I mean, it's not easy. It's never like, oh, I've got it figured out. Boundaries and borders and where to spend the money and where to spend your time. Like that's a daily thing. But I get up every morning and ask God what I'm supposed to do today, and I still do that to this day. And He helps me with some of those decisions.
You mentioned helping your kids and your wife achieve their dreams. The question we always wrap up this podcast with is, are you living the dream?
I would say if you look at my life and don't feel like that I'm living the dream, you didn't look very close. Because, like, I mean, the things that I've been able to do, the awards my artists have won, the places I've been able to travel to, being portrayed in a movie by Trace Adkins.
By Trace Adkins, which we're running out of time. We need a part 2 here so we can cover that.
Yeah, I mean, that and just the success that my artists have had, and the fact that the movie came out and I'm still working with MercyMe and I'm in it and we're still cranking out number ones and we're still selling out arenas. Like that's kind of the weird part for me, because usually when a movie comes out, like Apollo 13, everybody's retired. Those were the good old days, that kind of thing. And we're still right in the middle of it and cranking it out and having fun doing it. But yeah, I mean, I'm absolutely living the dream. Like I'm the definition of living the dream.
Thanks for listening to the Springboard Music Podcast. If there's something that resonated with you in this episode or an episode that you would like for us to create in the future, please do not hesitate to reach out to us at Springboard Music on Instagram.